Let's see if this is a general overall feedback video on some of the videos lately. Oh, man, I laughed my ass off when I saw Gary's last video to Anton where he's like, if it sounds like a car salesman and it talks like a car salesman, well, you know what I mean. I'm just thinking, yeah, fuck. I mean, Anton's sitting there using $10 words when a 50-cent word would be just fine, right? It would fill the gaps, but he's got this way of trying to maintain his ethos and his reading list. And I mean, you try to talk to him down, like you said, it's kind of like, oh yeah, he does almost sound patronizing because, I mean, God forbid he actually takes steps to try to quit his job, his position, actually to lower himself. Maybe go take on another position at a telemarketing plant. That might be something else. If if he decided to actually step up to the plate and step down from the ethos, that would be interesting. But Gary, I understand. I understand every damn thing that Anton is saying. As a matter of fact, I made the video before he made the video. I think he got it off me. I mean, in that long video, I suggested this, the whole idea of the universe kind of evaporating, and I mentioned that again in another video. Not that credit where credit's due. It doesn't matter. I mean, and of course, Anton, he always throws me in a limelight, like I've misunderstood what he said. Kind of like when I'm talking about hierarchy. He's like, well, some people are just better than other people at things, right? And it's so bogus to hear that, because and then to listen to him try to shuffle around like chess is a digital game and pool is an analog game and robots playing whatever that means, and this kind of thing. I mean, I need to change this whole channel just to the Critique Anton channel, I guess. But yeah, first of all, if you actually play chess with somebody, I mean, I guess he thinks that a bunch of zeros and ones going back and forth is playing chess. Computers can play chess against one another, or robots can't play pool against one another. Oh, well, that robot knocked the ball in, and that one didn't. But we wouldn't know what playing means because we're so caught up within the centrifuge, the centrism, not only logocentrism. And there should be a distinction maybe between logocentrism, word centrism, and anthropocentrism or anthropocentrism, right? and I guess I wanna harp on that a little bit more. Yeah, when you play chess with somebody in person, one really interesting thing would be to take the piece and put it like in the top corner, right? The top corner of a square, and then the other piece you set it right next to that piece in its square, right? But he's trying to talk about, well, it's recorded as in these frames, right, in these squares, and hence it's digital. But when you play a real game of chess, sometimes the rules are not, you get away with breaking a rule where you don't have the computer eye, the computer exactitude watching it. Sometimes the board's even set up wrong and you continue to play. Sometimes black accidentally goes first. Sometimes you make an illegal move and it's not noticed by either of the people. Did you stop playing chess at that time? I mean, there's a lot to be said about analog. And then have you ever played an online pool game? You don't think that you're pushing pixels around when you're using your mouse and doing that? You don't think there's anything that's digitized about that? I mean, even the camera substituting for our eye watching people play pool is a digitizing of the game. I mean, it's not that the game is being digitized, but it's a digitizing of the game. And so it's kind of absurd to listen to, and this has always been the critique of Anton. He's always got this way about him that's really, it's pleasant, it's nice, and he's got his ethos, and he's, but he's always name dropping, as buttresses. I call his names buttresses, right? As if, well, I mean, it's kind of like him going, well, I'm against dogmatic individualism, and yet here is my book that I've signed. And by the way, here's these other people that synthesized these ideas. It's not that these ideas weren't actually like floating in the airs already, but oh, they synthesized them and wrote them down and put their names on them. And so now I've got my reading list, my ethos, and let me drop the name and say about the name. And da-da-da. Anyway, it's absolutely disgusting how back and forth he is. So I can see why somebody would get confused about it, but that's the whole idea, is that, and then he drops it all off. You know, he's not going to hold ground. I am like liquid. I am like air. I just float through. And if you actually nail him to the ground, like I did on the tribe in the Amazon, and catching his statements, he's like, you know, instead of saying I didn't say that, now all of a sudden I'm, you know, kind of like you, I'm framed out of context wrongly, and you know, it's like, oh bullshit, man, you got locked and you just pissed, right? And so, but the cool thing is that when he, you know, his air is not just polite, but it's light, and there's something about that relationship outward that always making certain that there's kind of this lightness, but it is kind of with this I don't know what Gary's getting at sort of thing. Right, and then in his last video, or a couple of videos, it's like, well, doesn't it make sense? And by sense, I mean logical sense. I mean, does it make sense that one could be able to speak about the universe without consciousness, or the universe as not being complete without consciousness? And then I come back with my logical sense, and then his next reply is, then his next reply, I just can't get another. It's not a math problem. So by sense we mean logical, but by logical we don't mean mathematical. We mean logical. Well, we don't actually mean logical. What I mean is sensical, right? So let's make certain that we keep on, like, you know, not locking down on whether it's sensical or whether or not it's logical or whether or not it's mathematical. Let's make certain that we steer the audience back and forth at our convenience. And it gets really tiring, right? But the whole point of what Anton's doing is trying to describe the facts. Either it's facts about language, or it's the idea. The ideas. I'm just dropping ideas. But of course in here there's facts, right? And then when you challenge him on the facts, like to say, no, the game of chess is also an analog. It's also this stochastic. It's lived through and still called a game in retrospect. Okay, so this is where I want to take make a segue. Kind of like he's so caught on this idea, you know, that how are we not anthropocentric? And if he means by this, how are we not human, right? If he thinks that somebody thinks that they fall into themselves and that they wake up into a dream and they are no longer human in this dream, they're some avatar of themselves in their waking life, then I agree. You know, hey, I'm human through and through. But when he talks about, like, can you success, you know, he was really patronizing to be serious on one of his comments. Not that you give a shit, Gary, but he was giving, you know, about her. But he had to split the word consciousness twice, right? Because I was talking about that logical, you know, how he has to put it in the set and out of the set at the same time and call consciousness temporality and justify it on this idea that Heidegger is suggesting, that this nothing that Sartre calls consciousness, not that Heidegger said that because he was pre-Sartre, but that consciousness is the Dasein and that Dasein is the time, even though in being in time, like 3/4, just after halfway through being in time, you know, 5/8 of the way through. I don't even remember the chapter. He talks about the design as being away from time, looking back at time, right? So he's not making it synonymous with time. But once again, this is like, it's got to be fluid. You got to have it both ways, right? You can't both be logical and mathematical, because God forbid, if the logic's wrong, then it's wrong. But the segue is this. The segue is this idea of anthropocentrism and being able to step outside. And he likes to use dreamless sleep as this vacuous notion where the consciousness collapses or is no longer there. I mean, I haven't read his book. Good God. But you're all right, Everyone's trying to sell their shit, sell their stinking shit. But anyway, and so there's this idea of that kind of like every single word points to another word, right? If you're going to use language. But there's this point where your mind goes blank. You're awake, right? You're not in a sleep and you're not dreaming sleep, but your mind goes blank. Your eyes are open. You're conscious, but you're not thinking in words. There's no words that are going through your mind. And you can be there looking at like your dog, right? Or your cat. And I guess maybe the mirror neurons, the pyramidal mirror neurons that give the sense to you that you are in their skin. You might even twitch. You might even move in your environment like them, right? And then all of a sudden you snap out of this state, words start coming into your mind, and then you go, kind of like Anton wants to point back at dreamless sleep and go, that's the real mystery. I would rather say, man, I was awake and there were no words going through my head. And at that point, I was identifying with these animals. I was identifying with these things that were outside of the human scope, right? Because what he's trying to say is that language is inside of a container. You can't escape the language. You can point outside of it, kind of like he's pointing to dreamless sleep, kind of like he wants to point to, pre-consciousness or post-consciousness, but say one must be placing their imagination on it. When I want to say, no more so than when you're talking about dreamless sleep, it's it's when language goes on vacation in your conscious state. When language goes on vacation, then there's this engagement, right, with the rest of the world, and there's identifying processes that go on that allow sympathy to occur. Now, this is my argument with vegetarianism: is that you don't want to identify with the bugs and the gnats, but you do want to identify with the higher order animals. Even this notion, like, okay, I'm not going to let anyone get away with this idea of saying suffering is due to neuroactivity, because gnats have neuroactivity, and when you drive, you're just slaughtering them, even though it takes like 56 human-sized vats full of gnats. I did the calculations, crunched the numbers. Per neuron, you'd have to kill 56 human 70 liters worth of gnat neurons to equate to the same neurodeath that a human would go through, for whatever that means. But my point is this, that a lot of the vegetarian argument has to do with that identification with animals. Whether they're yours or anyone else, I think it has to do with identification, right? And so I think there needs to be more propaganda, love scenes. Sigourney Weaver needs to be making out with the alien, and then maybe we'll start feeling it more about insects, right? Because this is my point about it. I think that the currency, as Conference Report got to it, should be the point. I think that it should be more about anesthesia, right? Like we're going to kill this animal, so let's give it anesthesia, right? We want it to be well, we want to treat it well. Let's treat it well. Let's treat it the very best we can, so there's nothing that we can see in it of it being dissatisfied. And if it's nervous or cold, treat it like a baby. But then when we're ready to kill it, at least give it anesthesia. I mean, when I was going to go under for surgeries, give me my anesthesia, right? I'm not Wittgenstein. Even though I do deal with pain, I do enjoy pain to some extent. And there's just no denying that. I'm kind of bonding with the modern mystic of a lot of pain is just It's really just wordplay in a lot of ways. You can get over it, you can get around it. Anyway, I guess those are my thoughts of the day. Yeah. Peace. Peace. Peace.